When I was a kid, I had trouble talking to those around me. English isn't my first language, and I struggled in Chinese school. Trying to be friends with anyone felt like receiving constant paper cuts. The pain was sharp, and the wounds were barely detectable if you're the person who didn't receive the cut. One icebreaker I had to try and befriend my grade 5 homeroom teacher was asking him, "What's the point of living when we all just unalive anyway?" To which he replied, "I think it's to make other people happy. That's what I think I was put on this earth to do." I said thanks and walked away to stare off into the playground by myself while daydreaming about make-believe Sonic fights in the style of epic Dragon Ball Z fights. A few days later, I got called into the office to talk to the vice principal. I was so scared that I was in trouble. I didn't want to cause a scene about how low my grades were so that my father starts yelling at me again and my mom be silently disappointed in me. It turns out the VP was really worried about me. She asked if I had any friends, and I hesitantly started listing some kids from my class who I knew or had brief interactions with, and made up this game show I saw on TV where they asked the top 10 most asked questions, and one of them was the question I asked my teacher. She let me return to class. A girl I was sitting with asked me what was that about, and I rolled my eyes and said, "It was a dumb therapy session." Therapy being this thing that Asian families just don't subscribe to, which leads to a lot of mental health issues down the line. At the time, I had this hand-me-down PC from my brother that ran Windows 2000. Now, Windows 2000 couldn't run much, but it was able to run old games where I got to play Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2, 3, and more. To be honest, I don't think I've ever been able to finish those games. They're really hard, especially those water levels. I think this is why I'm afraid of swimming. But that didn't stop me from loving them. It was a refreshing change of pace to play a series that went so fast, with all these alternate pathways depending on how low or how high you were on the stage. One game I've always dreamt of having was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which I never actually played through beyond its first stage on the PC. And I really want to play it now after seeing Sonic 3. I used to play Live and Learn over and over on Winamp and download all the promotional material and trailers for the Sonic Advance games. Something about the artwork and the character designs are so cool. They reminded me of old school cartoon characters with their gloves and big shoes, and they all had these really distinct silhouettes that made them really fun to draw, and you bet I drew a lot of Sonic fan art. And during summer school at a Taekwondo dojo where we spent most of our time not learning Taekwondo, but watching Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Spider-Man, and Shrek, good times. I would spend some of the art making time painting Sonic on a wooden block. One of the instructors looked at me and remarked, "Oh, it's Sonic." To which I replied, "Yeah, Sonic." I was like 8 at the time. I was so obsessed that I would watch Japanese Sonic X on Real Player, and when the English version came out, I would watch them again just to compare what they did and discuss these episodes with people on a fan site called Sonic Tonic, where I met my first online friends. I even befriended the webmaster and briefly reviewed Sonic Heroes for the site, though I was never really good at the game and I didn't get that far. It opened up a lot of strange places on the internet for me, like Newgrounds, and you know what happens there. Being on these Sonic fan sites felt safe to me. I finally had some older kids to talk to about the thing that we were all obsessed with. The internet is often full of creeps and we need to be careful, but I got really lucky and chatted with some decent folks. The anonymity removed the crippling stress I felt trying to interact with kids my own age in real life. Watching anime and Sonic X provided a safe space for me to hang out with my friends in the Sonic gang. One episode that really sticks out was episode 14, where Sonic is invited to be the guest of honor to meet anime president Richard Nixon as part of a strategy to get him re-elected. Instead of showing up, Sonic spends the day with Helen, a lonely wheelchair-bound girl who wished to go to an island with her dad and spend more time with her parents, who are working a lot to afford her wheelchair and proper health care. Shenanigans ensue as the government chases after him via home invasion and trespassing, and even firing a missile at him. I guess that's where American tax dollars go to. That makes sense. Sonic and Helen end up on top of this hill filled with beautiful flowers. Before Sonic goes to pick some, she stops him and tells him that it would be better to come back with her parents to see the field of flowers in all its beauty. They eventually helicopter to the White House and meet the president. Later that night, she tells her parents about the unforgettable adventure she had with Sonic that day. In the kitchen, her mom cries and her dad vows to take more time off of work to spend it together as a family, while Sonic sits by a tree, watching over the family like a guardian angel. As cheesy as Sonic X and Sonic Media tend to be, tender character moments like these really drives home the feeling of belonging and acceptance. Things I've rarely felt growing up as a queer person of color with an abusive, bigoted father and a distant and hardworking mother. The world felt and still feels scary for the way it treats neurodiversity, queer folks, and people of color. Many years pass, with unemployment looming heavy around the corner and feeling like I don't really have much to live for these days. The third Sonic movie comes out. After 2 very successful titles and a genuinely wonderful Knuckles spin-off show, I was stoked. Dune Part 2 was my most anticipated movie of the year, followed by Furiosa, and then followed by Sonic 3. My close friend Sukazu and I have been hyping each other up about it for half a year. I was so excited that I even made a fun bingo card. I didn't expect it to be a masterpiece or anything, but hanging out with my familiar blue, red, and orange friends felt like the perfect way for me to relax and have fun during the holidays. And the movie was overall a great time. Full spoilers ahead. If you're deep into this video, you've probably already seen it, but if you haven't, feel free to skip to this timestamp in the description. Watch the movie and come back later and let's talk about it in the comments section. Sonic 3 is a full-on unapologetic superhero movie, and I love superhero movies. What I find so appealing about Marvel is that their heroes feel very human and relatable. I'm gonna use the word human in a spiritual sense because, what I love is that the Sonic heroes get their hero shots and the movie never makes fun of it. They're really colorful, cute, and really cool all at the same time. They're like the Powerpuff Girls. The VFX look so beautiful, and I hope that we've come a long way from the extreme crunch and fallout of post-Sonic 1 facelift. The talent and artistry put into realizing these characters next to real people, animals, and environments are seamless. We understand that Team Sonic doesn't exist and are total cartoons, and I love that they don't even try to make them realistic, but they do make them interact with the real world realistically. Maybe the DBZ style fight towards the end looked kinda boring in a rocky wasteland, but that's how rocky wastelands look, and there's a reason why they chose to fight this big fight away from a populated city. It is what it is. One thing I'm not a fan of for big Hollywood action movies these days is how the final act is always a CGI brawl. Characters flying around, shooting energy beams, punching each other into the earth with some really dull, dark, and flat lighting. But the scene I'm talking about in this movie feels earned and works because we're following characters with a wide range of facial expressions with voices that fit very naturally to what's going on, opposed to an actor who gets their face covered up by a nanomachine supersuit with clearly unfinished VFX due to awful working conditions like the first Black Panther. This movie just looks great, and the storyboarding, editing, blocking, choreo, and animation makes the action easy to follow. We have some cheesy, cute, sometimes annoying banter between the main trio. I think the dialogue could have used some punch-ups. Pat Casey, Josh Miller, and John Whittington returned for script duties, and I think they've set up what works for this big-budget, product placement-heavy, accessible movie franchise. But I feel like most of the jokes don't really land. Compared to the biting humor of Sonic Boom, this feels like a missed opportunity. The one thing that does make these jokes and pop culture references more tolerable is the chemistry between the main trio. I think about how Sonic Heroes captures this team dynamic so well because you're spending time controlling and reacting to the banter between the characters in the team. As much as the film and TV industry tries to make video game adaptations, despite how great they can be, they ultimately are a different form of media, and it's miraculous how well the dynamics between these three characters remain intact despite all that. Knuckles is strong, funny, and probably autistic. Tails is a bundle of joy, highly intelligent, and full of love. Sonic is hot-headed, rushes into the action, and needs to learn teamwork and ways to control his emotions. Shadow is similar in all those aspects, but there's a difference in their life paths. He's a thrill seeker who, despite losing his hooter mama, grows up in the warm bosom of pop culture. That is a sentence I wrote. We're talking superhero comics and movies about heroes like Keanu Reeves' character in Speed. He finds family and becomes a well-respected hero. Shadow, on the other hand, was developed as the ultimate life form, like Mewtwo. Also, almost all he knows are tests and people using his powers for their own goals. The only person who truly showed him compassion and friendship was Maria. After she's killed, all the rage he had explodes into a passenger of vengeance and resentment. This legit makes him a perfect foil to Sonic. I mean, it's classic villain writing, but if it ain't broke, you know? In a poetic twist, they recruited Keanu Reeves for this tailor-made role in this gruff, teeth-clenching, John Wickian version of the Black Blur. If you look into his life and role as John Wick and how he's crossed paths with loss and grief many times and seemingly maintained balance and peace, I think he's an inspired choice for the role. Jim Carrey is pulled out of semi-retirement maybe because this is the script that will be important to a lot of people, or maybe he needed the money. I'm not sure about the former, but it's definitely the latter. This man does not phone anything in. He does double duty as two Robotniks in a classic doppelganger shtick that never fails to impress me every time I see a movie do it. I love how filming techniques have evolved to place seemingly the same actor in the same shot, and with very clever editing, body doubles, makeup, controlled camera rigs, VFX, and movie magic, we have a nearly seamless blend that feels very convincing. Sometimes the green screen look a bit jank, but when you see Jim Carrey going hard on a bit, doing a montage that features him pushing himself while he's riding a bike, or doing this awe-inspiring laser dance duet with himself, I can't not laugh. His unparalleled knowledge and talent for physical comedy and clowning really enhances what could have been two really boring characters. The set pieces are also quite diverse and fun to watch. As much as I love to see characters beat each other up, there's a lot of distinct variety that kept me entertained and wondering what was to come next. We have a one-sided gun team takedown in the lab, a race in the woods, a colorful one-sided battle and chase in Tokyo, a Mission Impossible style heist in London that climaxes in a fun, tense, variable gravity scene featuring Kristen Ritter, who is so talented and kind of wasted, a giant shonen anime battle scene, a scene reminiscent of Rick Sanchez fighting another Rick Sanchez by seeing who can outsmart and out-tech who, a team-up space battle with like 100 mechs that explode, and an after-credits scene that ends with the reveal of a very badass and adorable-looking Amy Rose, and people went wild. Two of my favorite moments in the movie is when Team Sonic first encounters Shadow, and even though Knuckles wants to brawl, they offer to talk and to settle things peacefully first. That's pretty cool. It imbues the audience with a lesson that a lot of the political world can take cues from. We talk first, and violence should only be used as a last resort to defend the innocent and the planet we live on. Towards the end of the movie, after Sonic and Shadow fight for a bit, and Sonic has the upper hand to beat Shadow, Sonic stops and says, "This isn't who I am." They take a moment and stop and talk about what's happened. How Sonic is so angry because of the violence Shadow inflicted on his family, and Shadow is so consumed with rage due to the violence the world has inflicted on his family. This kids movie that literally starts with product placement has the guts to center the main hero and the antagonist in a moment where they both meditate on family, love, peace, and anger management on the freaking moon. This movie up to this point has been so silly and absurd, and for a moment all these feelings I felt as a lonely kid struggling to make meaningful connections all the way to adulthood when I still struggle with anger and loss. This movie about some cute and edgy furry animals who all go super fast helped allow me to feel during this profound moment in a movie theater around people from many different age groups and walks of life. And that's the power of cinema. There's this video by Odysseus, which I'll link in the description, where he talks about the connection between Sonic and autism. The video describes all these moments in my life where I felt invisible and alienated. Things just clicked after that, and if you're watching this, I wanted to thank you for putting that video together. Sonic fans are a strange breed, and sometimes we're a delightful group of people. I was shocked by how many kids at the theater knew all these characters and cameos. There was even a couple sitting near me that must have been in their 70s. There's a power in escapism, and during moments of turmoil, through music, art, movies, books, we all learn lessons and we learn to live. To the returning Sonic fans and the new Sonic fans out there, losing something is often the most difficult thing to experience. The anger we feel is valid, and it's not helpful for us to judge how we feel. Instead of going fast, let time and the connections you have with yourself and those you care about heal your heart. Live and learn from the works of yesterday. I'm Snackers Prime, and thanks for watching.